Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Budget Faster and Better with Solver, a Microsoft premium tier budgeting and forecasting solution. My name is Mandy Rai, UK Sales Manager for Solver, and I will be your host for today. Now, the purpose of today's session is to discuss how your organizations can make faster and better decisions by automating your budgeting process, so more time can be spent on analysis rather than the manual tasks. So what will the next hour or so look like? Well, we will start off with a brief introduction into Solver, who we are and what is it that we do. I've given a little bit of insight in terms of budgeting and forecasting, but we'll deep dive further into that. We will then take a look at the key challenges that organizations face today when it comes to their budgeting and forecasting processes. We will then go straight into the exciting stuff and show a product demonstration of how Solver can help solve those challenges that most organizations are facing today. And lastly, we will wrap up with identifying some next steps in terms of how you can connect with Solver to gather further information. So let's get started with giving you a little bit of an overview in terms of who Solver is. Well, first and foremost, I mentioned that Solver is a premium tier, Microsoft premium tier partner. We have a global strategic agreement with Microsoft, whereby we have agreed that Solver will provide D365 customers and Dynamics customers with a cloud-based budgeting and reporting solution that integrates seamlessly with the ERP. Now, that has arisen over the last couple of years, but we have been a Microsoft partner for more than 20 years, since actually the business has been established. Now, in terms of Solver, it is a global business, as you can see from the slide here. We have a wide footprint of over 4,000 customers that we are supporting today in one of our regional offices that are identified in the black map there. We have over 100 partners, including partners like Nolan Business Solutions, where we are working together to provide customers, Dynamics customers, D365 customers, with advanced planning and reporting capabilities. In terms of how we are rated, Solver is highly rated both on G2 and Dresner's Advisory Services as a leader in CPM. And CPM, for those that do not know the acronym, basically stands for Corporate Performance Management. And if we drill that down further, that is everything to do with financial planning, which is budgeting, forecasting, financial reporting and analysis. Of course, you can take a look at what some of our customers are saying by accessing both of those sites. So let's go into some of the typical budgeting challenges that organizations are facing today, and I'm sure you might be facing some of those that I will raise. Now, most organizations will live either fully or partially in Excel when it comes to their budgeting and forecasting process. Mainly, this is because they have data in systems other than their finance system, which they need to pull together, and also because Excel gives them the flexibility they need to produce the desired output. But as you can appreciate, the whole process is very manual, which is very time consuming and of course can be error prone because we are humans and we can make error. Now, if we take a look at the spreadsheet juggler, that's the typical situation that organizations are in today that are utilizing Excel for their budgeting and forecasting process. Loading data from their ERP system, maybe even the payroll system and other systems out into Excel spreadsheets that then need to be formatted and distributed to all of the end users. That in itself takes time. Then comes a manual data entry process. that's quite vulnerable because all of these Excel files are sitting on end user desktops, and these end users are your budget contributors. They're sitting on end user desktops with very little use of security. And of course, once budgets have been received, pulling them all together to have a consolidated view across multiple departments or entities, that is very difficult and time consuming. Now, as you can see, and as you can appreciate, this whole process lacks functionality in terms of reviewing and approving budgets in an automated manner. This process, when it comes to the annual budgeting process, it's a dreaded process by many, many organizations that are doing it in Excel. Now with Solver, as we can see with the Decision Optimizer, all of the items that we've discussed at the top get fully automated and put into a single system. You have automatic data integration to load historical data from your ERP system straight into Solver. We then have dynamic parameter-driven budget models, a web-based data entry that supports the contribution that the budget holders can make. We then have automatic budget workflows, so you can actually see the status of all of the users. You know, who's started their assignments, who's contributing to the budget, who started that workflow, who hasn't started, whose assignment has been approved, their submission has been approved, whose hasn't. We then also have special functionality such as built-in comment windows and line items for spreading. Finally, you can have dynamic forecasting, what-if modeling, and a number of other features. Some of these I will be showing you today. But before I do, let's break this process down further. Firstly, as I've already highlighted, Solver can connect to multiple data sources. We have pre-built integrations to some of the leading ERP solutions out in the market today. But we also have the ability to load in data via other methods such as CSV or via SQL, Excel, etc., which will allow you to bring in data to support your planning, forecasting and reporting processes. Now, from a planning perspective, Solver then supports the ability to prepare that process by setting targets, assumptions, budget setting. We can then support the process of capturing budgets for income from your brands or your services or grants and funds, etc. Then allowing you to plan around the cost and the expenditure side of things, such as payroll costs, which is our highest cost in any organisation today, OPEX, CAPEX, projects, sales, not sales, sales comes into income, but any other cost that is relevant to your business. And then, of course, what we're doing when we capture all that information is we're then bringing that together with your actuals to be able to report based on budget totals, budget versus actuals, aggregate that to be able to see the P&L from an entity perspective, from a regional perspective, from a group perspective, of course, having consolidated balance sheets, cash flows, etc. So that full process when it comes to the planning process can be fully supported within Solver. So we've talked a little bit about what we can do. Let's put that into action and show you a product demonstration to show you what Solver can do. So first and foremost, I'm going to start off by showing the end result of what some organizations will want to achieve. So Solver, as a Microsoft preferred solution, our solution is built on the Microsoft stack, and we have a real-time integration to Power BI. So in my example here, I have a cash flow simulation dashboard, which I am viewing in Power BI, but the data, the underlying data, is actually coming from Solver. So I could be a Power BI user, not have a Solver license, and actually view the data in Power BI. So this cash flow simulation, a lot of CFOs, FDs and controllers will want to use a simulation like this to be able to understand their cash position. Now, in my example here, I have the ability to use the sliders to increase or decrease any of these items. So I might think that my product revenue should be increased, and I can use this simulator to predict what my cash ending balance will be for the period that I have here, for the year that I have here, and at the moment I'm viewing this information for all of my entities. Now, if I wanted to, I can quite easily and dynamically change the view of this data to say I would like to see my actuals up until July. Again, when I'm making this change, it's in real time connecting to Solver. So it's connecting to the Solver solution and pulling through that data in real time. I can then say I actually want to view this information just for one of my entities, for example, there, and I can create the simulation. Now, this is a Power BI user utilizing a Power BI dashboard that's actually feeding data from Solver. However, if I was a Solver user, I could then have access to the cash flow budget or the balance sheet budget to be able to create a new scenario, budget scenario, forecast scenario, or adjust the budget accordingly. So if I had a license, which I do, I can click the link here, and that will take me straight into the cash flow budget, where, as I mentioned, I could create a whole new budget or forecast scenario based on some of the adjustments that I would like to review. So that direct link to Power BI is something that Solver supports. Now, whilst we're in the Solver solution, it is a fully cloud-based solution, which is hosted on Microsoft Azure. All of our European customers will be hosted on the European data center, which is in Ireland, Dublin, Ireland. Now, what I'm going to do is go in and access Solver to show you some of the preparation that can take place prior to us sending out the budget assignments to our budget contributors, who may be our department heads, our cost center managers, etc. Now, in Solver, Mandy, as a user, is a full access user, so she has access to the whole solution, full administrative access. However, we have another type of user, which will be an end user. An end user, as mentioned, is a budget contributor who could be your cost center managers or your department heads that need to contribute to the budget or forecast. We will go into that view shortly during the demonstration. But Mandy is the budget manager, so she is wanting to set up the budget, and she's going to input some drivers, make some assumptions, so to prepare that before we go through the process itself. So the first thing Mandy is going to do, as she's already logged into Solver, she will access the planning menu here and select input templates. This will be all of the budget and forecast templates that she or her team have created, where they can be categorized in any of these categories here. Now, the first thing she's going to do is she's going to load up the breakback P&L breakback template, because she wants to create a baseline budget. So in this scenario, Mandy is going to use the report parameters, which are dynamically driving the data that we're seeing here. So because Mandy is a full access user, she is going to view data for this particular entity, which is SUS, which is her USA entity. She's going to bring through her actuals up until 09/2021. She's then viewing the forecast for the current year, and then the budget for the next year. She will be storing any data against this scenario here, which is called budget. As you can see, Solver supports multiple scenarios. You can create as many different budget or forecast scenarios as required, and you can use those to do a comparison of the two. Now I'm going to run this just to load up any refreshed or new data. And then what I will be able to see is a full P&L for my entity SUS, where I can, in this column, see my year-to-date actuals. And year-to-date will, of course, be until the period that I've selected here. I then have my budget for the remaining periods, and a sum of these two to give me my total forecast for the current year. Now, what I can do is I can see my revenue accounts, my cost of sales and my expenditure accounts. And what I am able to do in Solver is drill down. So if I was querying where this 7 million was coming from, or I want to see the breakdown of that, I can drill down and view the transactions as they are being loaded into Solver. Now, in this particular form, Mandy wants to create a baseline budget. She's got the full P&L for her US entity here, but the way she's going to be consuming this report or this template is that she is going to be inputting a desired net income. Now, what she is going to use is the fact that the forecast for this year is 3.2 million. So she's going to assume that we should achieve a desired net income of 3.5 million for next budget year. And what will happen as soon as I hit enter, boom, based on an algorithm that is taking a look at the historical data and the relationship between each of these accounts, and it's also incorporating my desired net income there, Solver has automatically predicted a budget for me. Now it's using a flatline spread, but in seconds, I have a budget for each of these accounts for the full P&L of my US entity. Now I can store this as a baseline budget, as a best case scenario, worst case scenario, medium scenario. Again, I can store that against one of the scenarios that I have here. All I would need to do is save the data, and that would be stored back into the Solver solution. Now, once Mandy's created that baseline budget, the next thing she's going to do is go back into the input templates. And this time I'm going to use a scenario to show you how we can support driver-based budgeting. So we're going to go into our workforce templates, because to show you how this works, we will be inputting, or Mandy will be inputting, some assumptions around payroll, and then we will be sending out the payroll budget assignments to our end users for them to contribute and input into. So the first stage is that Mandy is going to now highlight what the assumptions will be around payroll. Now, most of our organizations will have assumptions that will be global assumptions that are relevant for all of their entities and all of their departments, or they might have entity specific ones. Now, in my scenario here, I am isolating this just to payroll, but in the same form here, I could be capturing payroll related assumptions, travel expense, travel assumptions, capex assumptions, capital life assumptions, sorry, P&L assumptions, inflation assumptions, etc., etc. Like I said, just for this scenario, I'm isolating it just to payroll related assumptions. So in my demonstration environment here, I have first and foremost the ability to budget against my payroll based on salary grades or salary bands. So a lot of public sector organisations will have some sort of salary grade or salary bands. Now, the assumptions I'm going to set for the next budget year, which in my scenario will be 2022, is that for NIC, we're going to assume that the business will pay 15% as a rate. And based on the salary grade or salary band that you sit within, you may get specific pension or bonus contributions. Now, in this scenario, I'm just going to up this to 25%. And then I have some assumptions around life insurance, benefits, medical cover, dental cover, etc. Now, once I've inputted my assumptions or changed my assumptions, I can save the data. And what will happen is these rates will be stored against these accounts against this particular scenario here, which is called budget version 2. If I wanted to, I could go back in and change those rates, and I can then store those against these accounts against a different scenario. And I could call it budget version 1 or forecast version 1, forecast version 2, etc. But as mentioned, these rates, these 25% that I've just changed, and all of these rates here will be stored against budget version 2. What that means is that anywhere where we are looking at these accounts and we're looking at this scenario budget version 2, these rates will be applicable. So let's go in and see that. So in my forms again, I'm going to go in and open up a payroll planning form. Now, this is a demo environment, this is demo data, and this is a demo example of a planning form. Most organizations will have specific needs or certain nuances that they want to incorporate into this, and that's fully possible. All of the examples I show you today are fully customizable. We can build input templates and reports based on your processes and your requirements. Now, again, using the report parameters, I can dynamically change the view of this data. So at the moment, I am viewing this data for my entity SUS. And this time I'm actually specifying which department I want to budget this data for or input data for. And in this scenario, I've got, or in this case, I've got, I'm using department 200. So within my SUS entity, I am budgeting against department 200. Again, I'm going to be using budget scenario 2, and I've got my period selected here. Now, I just ran this a minute ago just so that it could pick up any of the recent changes in terms of any kind of new rates that are being applied. It's always best practice whenever you're viewing a report or a budget template to go in and just run, because the last time I ran that was a day ago, and I just want to pick up any new data that might have been inputted or loaded into the Solver solution. Now, in this payroll planning form, first and foremost, I can see that we are pulling through data from the payroll system outside of the ERP because I am able to see my existing employees. So I can see that I am got their name, I've got their title, their hire date, end date, salary grade, hours that they work, and their salary. Now, what I can also do is if I scroll over to the right-hand side, I can see a breakdown of do I want to implement an increase for that person? If so, what will be the percentage? Or maybe it's a fixed amount. And of course, I can have an additional column here that shows the fixed amount. Or I can specify what date that increase should take place. If I scroll over to the right-hand side, I can actually then, although I can see the annual salary here, for example, Freddie, it's 200,000. If I scroll over to the right, I can see the breakdown on a monthly basis for salary and any of the other benefits like pension, NIC, based on those rates that Mandy had inputted into the assumptions. So I can go in and review existing employees, as well as I have the ability to add in new employees or new hires. So in my scenario, I'm going to budget for a new hire. I don't know the name of the person, but I know that their job title will be an assistant. They will start on the 1st of April. And their salary will, of course, go until the end of December, because that's how I'm budgeting it in my demo here. They will get a salary grade 5. They will work the same annual hours as everyone else, and they will have a 100k salary. Now, as soon as I enter the 100k salary based on the annual hours, it gives me the hourly rate for that person. If I scroll over here just to the right slightly, what I wanted to show you from a demo perspective is remember that 25% rate for salary grade 5 for both pension and bonus, that's visible here to Mandy or to the budget contributor. So if I was to easily change that to salary grade 4, that will of course change to the specific rates we had stated for pension and bonus for that particular salary grade. What I could do is, for example, if I know this new hire, we've agreed a higher percentage than normal, I could go in and dynamically change that from the 25% and override that to 30%. Now, most of our organizations won't allow their budget contributors to do that. But again, this is me showing a demonstration, and I just want to show you the flexibility of Solver. Now, for this new hire, I can see I budgeted 100k for their salary. That's their annual salary. If I wanted to, I could allocate that 50% of their salary will go against this particular department in December. We do have organizations that have a full allocation model, a cost allocation model, based on not just headcount. It could be per square footage, it could be number of users of a certain system, it could be invoices processed, etc., etc. That allocation can be fully supported. This is just a very small part of it that I'm just showing, but we can model that full cost allocation where you can distribute costs from one department to others based on drivers like headcount. But let's go back to this. So I budgeted this new assistant to start in April, and therefore their salary will start in April. Although I entered their annual salary, I can see the breakdown on a monthly basis, and the fact that they are starting in April until December here, I actually only need 70-odd thousand to be budgeted for this new hire. If I scroll over to the right hand side, I should be able to see the 30% of the pension, the national insurance contributions, bonuses, and any other incentives or benefits like the dental cover, medical cover, etc. So within Solver, not only am I able to do some adjustments to existing hires, I can of course input and start budgeting for new hires from zero. So I can build that budget up. Now, again, if I wanted to store this data, I can save this data, and all of this information will be stored against this budget version here for this particular department and for this particular entity. Now, there's many models that I could show you today, and we won't unfortunately have time for that, but I am more than happy to go through any specific use cases or scenarios that you may have. What I'd like to move on to is showing you the workflow, because this is where it will provide you better control and flexibility when it comes to your annual budgeting process, especially if you have a number of cost center managers or department managers that are contributing. So within the workflow, we'll go through this as I create it. I'm going to create a test 2 version. So this is the name of my workflow. I am going to give it a start and an end date, because what will happen is when this workflow starts, the Solver system will automatically send out an email to everyone, all the users that are a part of this workflow. It also means that if on the 1st of November, a user that's a part of this workflow tries to access their assignments, it will be locked for them. So we are restricting or locking this based on a time frame. Then within the workflow, we have an approval process. We actually have a 2-level approval process. So if, for example, we send out an assignment to an end user via the workflow, one, they will get an email notification that prompts them to go into Solver. And then when they do their submissions, when they complete their submissions, they can complete their assignment, and then that information can be reviewed and then approved as well. Now, because it's just myself on the line today, we will set Mandy as the reviewer only, and we will bypass any approval stage. So we only need that first level. You will see I have the ability to save data. That basically means that rather than going back and forth with the budget contributor, I can actually store and save or override any data they have inputted. So if I think that something needs to be uplifted or decreased, I can do that without going back to that budget contributor. The next step is I'm going to select the assignments that will be a part of this, and I can select as many assignments as I want to. So I could go with the personal one here, personnel one here, sorry. We'll go with the, we'll grab some over here. This is the one we want, that one there, and any others. So because you can have multiple people a part of this workflow. Now, the next step is over here, I can lock down how the data will be viewed. So what data the user will be viewing. And I can restrict them, or I can let the end user decide. Now, the reason why you might want to let the end user decide ticked here is you may be sending out an assignment to somebody that looks after multiple departments, and therefore you want them to be able to enter in and create a budget for every single department that they are responsible for. Now, the next step is I have the ability to select my users. So my users could be selected as user roles or user groups, or I can select individual users. Now, I only have about 5 end users here, so it's a very small user base. but usually, typically organizations will utilize the roles over here because they will create groups of users within their organization. The last step is because I can have multiple assignments within a workflow and multiple users, I can select on this tick box here which assignment I want Johnny to contribute to. So in this scenario, I just want him to contribute to the other expenses. Now, once I'm happy with my workflow, I can save and publish. And as mentioned, because we've used that workflow, that Automate system will send out an email notification to Johnny to prompt him to go into Solver. So at this stage, I am going to load up a new web browser and we will go in as Johnny. So Johnny will log into Solver as an end user. So we have a slightly restricted view than Mandy. He's also restricted to only seeing data for the entity SUS, which is the US entity. He cannot see data for any other entity because within the administration, we restricted him from seeing anything else. He logs in with his username and password, which I should take a moment just to explain that Solver does support multi-factor authentication, and it does also integrate with Azure Active Directory as well. Now, Johnny's signing into his Solver environment. He received an email notification which prompted him, but he can also see the notification on the notification banner here. So he has a new assignment in test 2. So he can go in and quickly access that straight away, or he can go into assignments here. Over here on his assignments, he has some assignments related to some specific workflows, but then also he may have single assignments that have been sent to him. We want to go into the workflow one, so we can see the workflow assignment there. It's called Other Expenses, which is the one that we ticked for Johnny. And now, because remember, I didn't let Johnny decide, he cannot change the parameters. He cannot dynamically change the data. So all of the data that he's viewing is only for SUS, and therefore any data he will be inputting will be for Department 100 within the SUS entity. Now over here, we have another expenses form here where Johnny can see that he needs to input the budget for the 12 months. He also can, if he scrolls over to the right-hand side, see that he's got the actuals coming in until September, which is the period that was selected or automatically selected for him. And then the rest of it is the forecast. And we have some data here in some of these accounts where we have a forecast and others we don't. That's a demo environment for you. Now, nice and easily, Johnny could just say, hey, I want to take my actuals for this line, and I'm going to copy and just paste that over here. You could even say, I'm going to use some Excel formula. So within the web portal, which is a HTML5 portal, we are rendering Excel. So Excel functionality is supported to make it nice and easy for users like Johnny to input the budget or forecast. What we can also do, I've just gone to my training account here. What we can also do is support spreading and line item detail. So within that training account, rather than giving it an overall budget, I could use put in a high level figure and then use some distribution rules like historical data and distribution of the budget based on historical, or create an even distribution. Or more importantly, I can do some line item detail budgeting. So within my training account, I can specify that I want a budget for Solver training, and that will be 10,000 over here. And I might want a budget for ERP training, and that might be another 2,000 here and another 2,000 there. And then on top of that, I can also enter in line item detail comments. So rather than putting in a 12,000 figure here at the top, I can actually provide a breakdown of how that training budget will be utilized and leave some comments. All of this information is stored within Solver so that it could be captured and reported on. Now, once Johnny is happy, he can complete his assignment. But before he does that, he needs to save the data. And if he wanted to, he can also leave a social media type of conversation, or he can have a communication with his reviewer, who is Mandy, and he can leave a comment to say, please check the training budget, as an example. Once he's happy, he can complete an assignment, and that has now gone off to the next stage. So at this point, although he can view it, he will not be able to enter in any further information. So that's Johnny done for today. He's done his assignment. He's happy. It's gone off to his reviewer. He's going to close down, and now we're going to go back into Mandy, which automatically you've seen she's already got a notification to say that an assignment is awaiting her review. So she's going to go in and load that up. And she can see the 12,000 there for the training budget, the line item detail there, and the activity log in terms of the communication that her and Johnny are having. At this point, she can reject, and that assignment will go back to Johnny, and she can leave a activity log in terms of why she's rejecting that, or she can mark as reviewed. Now, at this point, if she marks it as reviewed, it usually would have gone to an approver. If it doesn't have an approver, then it will just get locked as the final budget. So that is an example of how you can have full control of the annual budgeting process as well as your forecasting process. Within the workflow, if I go back to that workflow now and I look at the status of that workflow, I can see that status of workflow test 2, where I had my end users Ratty, she hasn't started any of her assignments. But if I click on Johnny, I can see that he's finished it and it's gone for review, and it's gone to Mandy for review. So again, full visibility and control of the budgeting process, which you cannot get when it comes to Excel. And this is fully automated. A couple of other scenarios before we wrap up. We have the ability to not just only support driver-based and multi-scenario and what if, you can do some sales planning as well. So in this scenario here, I have the ability to actually plan based on my customers. So I can say that if I'm a sales manager, I am going to budget that Barrytron will be purchasing our product consulting services. They'll be purchasing a quantity of 10 at a rate of 1,000. And that revenue will all come in January as a whole month. And then that will take that calculation and build that there. Or I can say it's going to be January to May. Or I can say, you know, it's going to be spread across from April all the way to December. So the ability to be able to capture as much information and as much detail as needed, as well as supporting detailed budgeting processes. Now, what we have here is, although I have budgeted at the product level, which is consulting services for my customers, which, by the way, this is not a free text field. We're actually looking up all of the customers that we have within the Solver solution. So it's prompting the user to actually select a customer. But we can have free text fields for any potential new customers if you wanted to budget for that as well. But over here on the product, we're actually specifying and budgeting on the product line. But what that's then doing is obviously sitting within my main revenue line here, which is called services. So although I'm budgeting at the product level, it's actually aggregating that up to my revenue account here, which is called my total services account. So that link there will of course be impacting my P&L for this particular entity and this particular department as well. So some revenue-based budgeting there as well. Lastly, there's so many other templates, but really when we get to the end of the budgeting process, the most important thing that we wanted to be able to do is run reports to be able to see how we are performing on budget, from actuals versus budget. So within Solver, we do have reporting capabilities. I've just gone into the reporting menu there called Report Templates, which essentially is my report library. I can open up a report, and you will notice that all of our reports are actually built on, have an Excel look and feel. That's because we are using an Excel add-in to build all of these reports, which means that all of Excel functionality, conditional formatting, charting capabilities fully supported within Solver. I'm just going to run that report now. And what I'm able to see is a report like this, where I can see my actuals versus my budget. Remember, we had that drill down. I can see a variance where I've got some conditional formatting there. I've got a variance figure, percentage, and the ability to also enter in comments to explain why a variance may be up or down. I'm looking at this for a particular period, which is my period that I've selected here, 2021-09. But if I scroll over to the right-hand side, in this report in itself, dynamically, I'm able to see my year-to-date actuals, so a breakdown up until September for my actuals. And also I can incorporate the breakdown of my budget for that P&L for that entity by month. So again, this is usually the end result, to be able to see a report like this, share this report like this out to the wider audience and to the senior executives, so that we can keep a track of how we are performing from actuals versus budget, and it could be actuals versus budget versus forecast as well. So virtually any type of financial and operational report can be created in Solver. Again, we're utilizing Excel to build all of these templates, which means it's a familiar environment for you. Although most organizations have some pain points and challenges with Excel, we're actually eliminating those because we're adding Solver on top of that. In terms of the look and feel of the report designer, we don't have time to go into a full reporting demonstration here, but I'd be more than happy to provide that to those that would like to see it. I'm just going to create a new report called Test 2 just to show you how Solver's report designer is fully integrated with the cloud. So as a report designer user, which is essentially a power user, I've gone into the reporting library to create a new report, and it's loaded up Excel for me. I'm just going to drag it over here onto my second screen. And you'll be able to see this is an Excel workbook, but there's three key differences. We have the Solver reporting ribbon, which provides you with the Solver functionality. We have the Solver report designer, which essentially will be accessing all of your financial and operational data as we're storing it in Solver. And then we have the layout editor here, which is a small window where we can actually filter and group on any rows or columns. Now, very quickly, it's a nice and easy drag and drop interface where I can easily create a report. By selecting any of the attributes that I want to be able to see. As mentioned, because we're utilizing Excel, all Excel functionality is fully supported as well. I can copy and paste. And this is just a snippet for you. And like I said, I can use some filtering. So I'm just going to filter on this particular row here, which is row 6. And I just want all accounts that begin with 4 there. And over here, I'm just going to click on magnifying glass to say I want just that account represented in that particular row. So you can see how the layout editor works in terms of the filtering. You can see how the report designer works in terms of dragging and dropping the information. I'm just going to go into the Run tab here just to validate and show you what that report looks like. I'm just going to run that. This is me running it in Excel. That's what that report looks like. It's of course just a snippet for you. It's not a full P&L report, but you can see how it's nice and easy drag and drop interface. If you know Excel, you'll be able to pick up Solver in a day. Once I've built the report in Excel, I can then save it, and it actually then publishes it to the HTML5 portal and saves it as a draft within the portal there. So that's all we have time to show you today. So to wrap up some of the key takeaways and what we showed. First and foremost, Solver is a single enterprise-wide reporting, planning and dashboarding solution for both executives and management, so for your whole organization. It is a fully SaaS platform. It's a cloud-based solution. So there's no application fees, there's no installation and database service required from your side. It's a fully cloud-based solution. It has an easy to use and flexible end user interface. As you can see, it's all web-based. All users access Solver via the URL, via the web. It supports all HTML5 web portals, or the modern web portals that web browsers that you are used to using today. What we were showing you today is the ability to automate the entire budgeting process with better control with workflows. So you saw that between Mandy and Johnny. We created plans on what if scenarios. So I showed you that when we created a baseline budget where we entered in that net income of 3.5 million, and we were able to see the breakdown of the budget based on an algorithm. We used key business and value drivers to create plans, such as impacts on salary increases, and we showed you that with the workforce planning templates and the payroll planning templates, where we entered in some assumptions around salary grades, around pension contributions, NIC contributions, and we saw the impact of that when we were building up the payroll budget for a particular department and entity. We looked at budget line item detail, and that was with the training account there, where we entered in detail around Solver training and ERP training to show the breakdown of the training account and the budget for that. And then firstly, we started off with the Power BI integration, just showing you the dashboard and how that looks from an end user perspective, should you be interested in, or if you are today utilizing Power BI and would like to link Solver to Power BI so you can utilize all of the data that you've modeled in Solver and share that out with the wider audience. Examples of some of the features that we did not show or dive deeper into today. So first and foremost, Solver has a flexible and pre-configured data warehouse where we are storing and can store all of your important data. We didn't dive into that today. We didn't show you the flexibility of the data warehouse. But again, you can bring in data from multiple different data sources into the Solver solution, not just your finance system, could be your CRM system, payroll system, into the Solver solution to support your reporting and planning needs. Solver also provides financial consolidation functionality, such as being able to automate intercompany eliminations based on organizational trees and structures, multi-currency handling, both on actuals and budgets and forecasts, as well as minority ownership as well. So joint ventures, part ownerships of any entities that you may have where you want to be able to see the consolidated output and the consolidated view. We didn't dive too much into the reporting. I just showed you a brief snippet of one report with the report designer, but we didn't go into report books and board packages. We didn't really show KPI reports, auto narrative reports, and other operational reports, but that is all fully supported in Solver. We also, for Dynamics customers, those are on GP, have the ability to report live on the pre-integrated systems like Dynamics GP, whereby if, for example, an accountant wants to be able to access real-time reporting with no movement of data into a database, then that is a unique offering and feature that Solver supports. So in a real-life example, most CPM solutions won't offer that. But if in a real-life example, if an accountant adds a journal in Dynamics GP as an example, that can then be accessed and viewed in a Solver report immediately using the live reporting connector that we have to Dynamics GP. We didn't go into automatic report scheduling, publishing and distribution. That's something that Solver can support via our publisher module. And although we did look at the Power BI dashboard, which is the output, we didn't really go into the API and how that works from connecting and building those dashboards to then share out with the wider audience. But again, the API does support Power BI, but I should note that it also supports Tableau as well. Now, if you'd like further information, you can go online and access www.solverglobal.com. That's our global site where you can find out everything about Solver. However, if you would like further information in terms of pricing, a personalized demonstration, you have some requirements that you think Solver can fit, but you'd like to dive deeper into that, then feel free to reach out to myself. I'd be more than happy to set up a further session with you to go through any queries or questions that you may have. Lastly, I'd like to thank you all for attending and joining the session today. I hope it's been informative. I hope you've been able to see how Solver can really empower you and automate your budgeting and forecasting processes to allow you to make faster and better decisions. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.